Let's do some scripture writing with art for those of us who are non-artists. Today we're going to be having some fun with watercolor. I don't know, I've just come to really enjoy working with watercolor lately. I am definitely not a watercolor artist and I'm not good at it, but I have watched quite a few on YouTube and I am learning how to use them better, at least more to my liking, I should say. So I'm starting this piece off with trying to sketch out a heart. As you could tell, I had to make several adjustments till I finally got it the way I wanted it. So now we're working with a heart and we're going to start with a design going around the outside of the heart, leaving the heart itself blank. And that is where we're going to actually write the scripture, is on the inside of the heart. So I'm getting my brush really wet and then I'm just, you can see me hesitating there, trying to decide which color I wanted to use. I love blues and teals and greens, the cool and calming colors. So I chose this shade of blue and I'm just drawing some flower petals, I'm painting some flower petals around the heart with this shade of blue. And I'm not bothering with whether the petals are darker or lighter or look like they overlap. In the end, this is going to have a few layers and it's also going to be very filled in. So you're not going to be looking at any individual flower or petal. But I am going to take some of the paint out of that petal that I just made and use it for the one next to it, just to use it and not have my page be quite so wet. This is the technique called the wet on dry. So my paper is dry and I'm just using my wet brush on a dry paper. I've tried wet on wet and I'm not good at all at that yet. I tend to have very wrinkly paper. I have a hard time getting the right amount of water on the paper when I wet the paper first, and I don't really get the effects in the paint that I like yet. So you won't be seeing that until I get a little bit better of a handle on that technique. But the wet on dry is pretty much just like painting with any other medium, except that the watercolors will have sort of these splotchy, more defined edges and more pastel-y brushed effect on the inside of each shape that you make. And I actually like that. I like, if you look at the flower on the top right, I really like how the petals, kind of look like they're overlapping and they have a defined shape, but they're also very soft on the inside. And while I'm doing this, I'm trying to stay aware of the fact that not all flowers are front facing. I think that's something that we forget, because when we learn how to draw flowers, we're always drawing the face of them, where you can see the entire middle. So I've got a couple that I'm going to make that you basically see the side of them. So they'll be kind of pointing up instead of facing straight at you. And this one right here is actually one of those where it's going to be kind of just petals that are going up instead of all down. And now I have muted down this blue color by adding a little orange. That's another thing I learned from watching other artists, is that if you want a bright color to be less bright, you can add its complementary color to it. So this one, you can't tell because it actually looks kind of green, but I added a little bit of orange to that same blue and it has made this color that is sort of a grayish green, and I really liked it. I just enjoyed that a lot. And then I wanted to bring it back to blue a little bit more, so this one I'm working on right now actually has a little bit more blue in it again. But I do like that it darkens it and makes it less of a vibrant color and more of a muted color. And I think I'm going to be working on trying to create some of my own colors in watercolor more, because I like the more muted colors, and watercolors don't tend to come with very many muted colors. They're usually pretty saturated and bright. And if you just mix black in with them, it actually desaturates the actual color instead of just toning it down in brightness a little bit. So I'm not really a fan of that method. And you see me just going with a second layer over some of these that have dried up enough to add some more definition in petals, because I'm not looking at a specific flower. This is another art piece that's just coming out of my head. It's not something I'm looking at a photograph and trying to imitate. So I am trying to just get the essence of a flower, kind of the impression of a flower, and it's not a specific kind of flower, and it's not supposed to look like a realistic painting. But I am filling in more of the white areas, and I am trying to add a little bit more depth to my painting by adding in more layers. So that's what I'm doing right now, and I kept the color a lot more saturated so that it would look like, you know, a darker, deeper color and add depth and dimension. So I just went back in with some more of that alternate color that I mixed myself, and adding more layers in there as well. Now I think I'm just going to let you watch as I paint the rest of the flowers around this heart. I'll put some music on so that you have some relaxation, but basically you're going to see that to fill in all the white space, I'm basically adding these little dots that almost replicate a hydrangea. And I'll do that in a few different colors as well. And then at the end, I will go back in and put in some sort of more leafy structures that are in some green, some colors that are definitely a lot more green. So I will be quiet for a few minutes and just let you watch while I mix up some colors and finish out the filling in of the blank white space around the heart. Okay, what do you think? Did you like how I filled in the background? Actually, at this point, I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I think it was kind of impressionistic. It looks like flowers, which is what I meant for it to look at, so that was good. And so now I'm starting to write the scripture within the heart. And again, I'm trying to sort of match the shape of the heart so that it's not just like written on straight across with a lot of empty space. And I did give myself some guidelines with a light pencil shading there as well. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I really love this particular scripture is the word that it uses within it. And I had to look this word up when I really thought about this scripture. The first time I really thought about it, the word reposes. I was like, wow, that's a really cool word. What does that mean? So this scripture reads, this is in Proverbs 14, chapter 33, and this scripture reads in the NIV version, wisdom reposes in the heart of the discerning, and even among fools she lets herself be known. And I thought, wow, okay, that's kind of cool. But I really like reposes, and I thought, what does that mean? So I actually had to look up the word reposes, and, dictionary.com, I kind of lean toward, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the correct Hebrew meaning of the word. But for right now, we'll go with the dictionary.com version. And the word reposes means, when used as a verb in this way, means to lie or to be at rest, as in rest from work and activity, and to be peacefully calm and quiet. And then there's another definition that says in the archaic version, which I would assume that the biblical version is sort of archaic, the word repose means to depend or rely on a person or a thing. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. If you think of wisdom reposing in your heart, I think that's super cool. It's like wisdom comes in and lays down and takes a rest inside your heart. And I think this kind of leads us toward what is intuition. And I think, God allowing his wisdom to repose in your heart is maybe it explains where we get intuition from. Maybe, it's just a really cool visual as to relying on him and how you gain wisdom and how you can access wisdom. Anyway, something to think about. I really love that verse, and it just is so beautiful to me. You could see there, I kind of messed up the spacing on my letters again. Oh boy, when am I going to get that right? I do not know. I try every time. I need to plan these out a little bit better before I get started. I just get so excited about my art that I forget to do all that planning in advance. So if you didn't know that this is where I was headed, one of my favorite things to do with letters in these types of art things is to do a thick letter where you write it with a marker and then go around the outside of each letter with a fine liner pen. And it just really makes the words pop off the page at you and kind of highlights them and their importance. And the other thing it can do too, which I found while I was doing this one, is you can actually change the shape of any letters that you didn't get quite right with your marker by using the fine liner to create the correct shape. It's like your eye is actually drawn to the outline of the letter more than it is the color that fills it in. So if your letter isn't quite right, you can actually correct it this way, which I do find that to be kind of cool too. It's a very artistic way to, correct yourself a little bit. So I actually love this verse, and I love these words with the outlines around them. I'm not sure how you're feeling so far about this, but when I was doing this part, I thought, ooh, this is really going to be a great finish to this art piece. So you'll have to tell me down in the comments what you think of this. And I'm just finishing up the last word that Of course, we had to squish a little bit, but this was my opportunity to really draw out those letters with this fine liner to make sure you could still read it, even though they were a little squished down there. It's my fault for not planning that out a little bit better. But again, this scripture is in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 33, and I just write that at the bottom. And I considered doing a few different things to this to change it, but I actually kind of like it like this, so I'm leaving it like this for now. And as always, I like to show you what this will look like in some mock-ups, so I have those coming up here in a second. Here's a little close-up, so you can see what it looks like. And that's what it would look like if you framed it and matted it, and I think it's kind of cool. It's not perfect, we're not artists, but it's pretty cool.